Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Chase, a limited series on the Shallow End podcast feed that focuses on a collector's successful chase of a card, set, or player run. I'm Dave Schwartz, and you're about to hear the story of the card that first captured my imagination 40 years ago. This isn't just a ghost card. It's the ghost of a ghost. It's a phantom of a rumor of an urban legend of a ghost of a ghost of a ghost. I am not exaggerating. I first read about this card 40 years ago in a magazine that my dad brought for me one day when I was homesick from school, and I became obsessed with the card. Today's guest chased down that card. His name is Tony, but you might know him better by his Instagram handle and YouTube page, TJ is Online. I have been waiting most of my life for a podcast like this one. And Tony, you better believe he delivers the goods. Buckle up, sit back, and learn about one of the most amazing cards never actually made. Except it was made. Sort of. It's complicated. So here is an episode I have been very much looking forward to a gentleman I've been excited to talk with in person. His name is Tony on Instagram. He is TJ is Online. Tony, welcome. And what chase of yours are we talking about today?
Thank you for having me, Dave. I enjoy your show. The first one I listened to was one when you had to sacrifice part of your collection to buy a new MacBook. So it's been a while. The chase we're going to talk about today is the 1977 Topps Reggie Jackson Proof.
1977 Topps Reggie Jackson Proof. For those who are unfamiliar with this card, say a little bit about it, and I will say this is not exactly a pack-pulled card. So tell us the background on this card, please.
So in 1977, it was the first Topps card Reggie Jackson had, wearing a Yankees uniform. And on the card, it shows him, he's wearing the Yankees batting helmet, and it's heavily airbrushed. And it wasn't a favorite card of the hobby, but it was Reggie Jackson's first card in a New York Yankees uniform, and the Yankees won the World Series that year. So it's a pretty popular card. However, what happened was that wasn't the original picture Topps had planned for the card. So in 1975, Charlie Finley, who owned the Oakland A's at the time, knew that a lot of his players were going to get lost to free agency, and he wasn't going to get anything in return because he learned that from Catfish Hunter. So in early August 1976, Reggie got traded to the Baltimore Orioles. And then he needed about 2 months to get ready for the Orioles. So he played the remainder of 1976 with the Orioles, had one of his better seasons, despite the Orioles not making the postseason. The Yankees ended up representing the AL East. But when it came time to re-sign, Reggie did not want to re-sign with the Orioles because he thought he can get far more money on the market. So he got a substantial offer from I believe it was the Montreal Expos or the Toronto Blue Jays. I have to check on that. But he got another offer from the New York Yankees for $1 million less a year, and he still took that. And he signed with the Yankees in November of 1976. Now, baseball's over. The World Series has been played. Topps is already working on the 1977 set. In December, Topps is now printing their first proofs. And what is a proof? A proof is a test card without a back. It's front only, and it has photographs of all the players on that sheet, and it has 9 different types of proofs get made. So you would have a proof with just the yellow color, a proof with just the red color, a proof with just the blue color. And if those colors come out nice and they don't need to add a little bit more blue or a little bit more yellow, then they go into multicolor proofs. You would have one with black and a different color. You would have red and blue together, blue and yellow. So they would mix it up. Then you would have a 3-color proof if it looked good, which is the card I currently have, and that's blue, yellow, and red, and then without the black. And if that looks good, then you get the 4-color proof, those 3 colors plus the black, and that pretty much would be the production card. However, they did not have a picture of Reggie Jackson in a Yankees uniform at that time, so they used a picture of Reggie from his Baltimore Oriole days. And this picture was photographed at the Oakland Coliseum in 1976 when Reggie was a member of the Baltimore Orioles. And Doug McWilliams took the photograph, and it's an unusual card because you think it would have been taken at Memorial Stadium in Baltimore, but it wasn't, because when the A's played their home games, they wore green or yellow uniforms, depending what the color scheme was for that any given night or day. So away teams had to bring their home uniforms, and that's what they were, when they played at Oakland.
So it's interesting. So in that 77 set, he has to be one of the few players who appears in a uniform officially, meaning the Yankee uniform, the airbrushed Yankee uniform. He's wearing one that with the team that he hadn't even played in yet, right? So usually they have the 1976 photos for the 1977 set, but rather than use the Orioles photo with the team they actually played for, they ended up airbrushing that admittedly not very attractive Yankees uniform onto him, even though he had worn it up to that point.
Exactly, and he was one of 66 players that moved during free agency that Topps had to prepare for, because they weren't sure which players were going to move to which teams, because not everything was finalized. And when Topps started the 1977 manufacturing process with the proofs, a lot was going on with the company. It was the first year that Major League Baseball had free agency, so they had 66 players to worry about, and there were 2 additional players that they also printed cards of who did not make the set. They also had the Topps cloth test issue. Those were stickers that looked like cloth, and they felt like cloth. So they had those going on too. And then they had the simple quality control processes at the same time of making sure that, the person pictured is correct and the name is correct and the color and the spelling and all that too. So it was a perfect storm of free agency, not having pictures of players in their latest uniform if it was known at that time, in addition to all the quality control checks and the Topps cloth set. And they had other sports too that they were doing. So
Sure. Why do you think, and might be speculative, or maybe you've read something in your research, why do you think Topps was so hesitant to just make the card of him in his Orioles uniform? That's the team that he finished up 76 with. Why not just have the 77 card of him wearing that uniform?
yeah, because in previous years, Topps would just issue cards in series. So Reggie would have been, they might have been an earlier card. Like in 1972, Steve Carlton was in the base set as wearing the Cardinals uniform, even though he was pitching for the Phillies. And then in the very last series, they had traded set and they had Carlton wearing a Phillies uniform, or at least made it look like he was wearing a Phillies uniform. I'm not sure if he's wearing a cap in that photo. I just think that they wanted Reggie Jackson in a New York Yankees uniform due to the market. So they did an airbrush, but Topps did kind of correct that mistake. But unfortunately, it was another test issue that they had going on in 1977, which was the Burger King card. So if you have a picture of that card, it's a nice photograph of Reggie Jackson, and he's holding the bat, and he's looking like he's getting ready to take a practice swing. Now, that was a very limited distribution. It was in the New York area and the surrounding states. So New Jersey had it, parts of Pennsylvania and Massachusetts, and so on. So they got the card, but that was the only real non-altered airbrush card that Reggie Jackson had in '77 with the Yankees uniform. So I think Topps did what they thought was the best. They just wanted to get Reggie Jackson in a Yankees uniform on a card, and that was probably the best way for them at the time to meet their deadline since they weren't going to issue cards in series.
So over the decades, this card has become something between the spectrum of highly desired for those who can find it versus urban legend in a way. And you sent me a copy of a cover of Baseball Cards magazine from 1984, which I remember seeing when I was a kid, in which this is on the cover of it. So this is one of those cards that people thought maybe they saw, and this is how they sort of learned that Reggie had a brief stint on the Orioles, but then it would vanish like a whisper in the wind. It would just be gone. At what point in your collecting did you decide that this is a card that you would like to add to your collection? And then how do you begin a pursuit like that?
Sure. In 1988, I started buying score packs because trying to get the Greg Jeffries card. And I pulled a Reggie Jackson card, and he was in a Baltimore Orioles uniform. And I didn't read that 1984 issue of Baseball Cards at the time. I didn't have the magazine. I got into the hobby in '85. And I saw Reggie as an Oriole, and then I looked in back at a card, and I never noticed it before. I should have noticed it with 85 Topps, 86 Topps, and even the 87 cards. Wow, Reggie played for the Orioles in 1 year. Didn't think too much of it, but I thought it was pretty cool. Then I saw The Naked Gun, and crazy movie. Reggie's wearing his Angels uniform, goes after the Queen. I'm like, okay, cool. So now I saw Reggie in a Baltimore Orioles uniform. I seen him in The Naked Gun, and I went in January 1989. I went to the 500 home run card show at Trop World in Atlantic City. I was just about to turn 13 years old. My dad took me, and Reggie Jackson was there. And not only was Reggie Jackson there, but my father knew a person who worked for Tropicana, and she was able to get us VIP tickets. So we went back there. We started to eat lunch, and who comes down to sit next to us but Martinez Jackson, Reggie's dad. So my dad has been a huge Major League Baseball fan. Also played high school baseball, but he's been a baseball card fan and a baseball fan since he's born in 1945. So he has memories as early as 1951 and 52 when it comes to baseball. And he starts talking to Reggie's dad, Martinez, about not just about Reggie, but just about baseball in general. And they hit it off. And Martinez tells me, Anthony, why don't you go introduce yourself to Reggie and tell him that you're sitting at my table, and maybe he'll sign a ball for you, shake your hand. I'm like, great. Now, I'm 12 years old at the time, almost 13. Walked up to Reggie. I saw him because he was in the VIP area. I guess the players were taking a break from signing, or the athletes. Reggie was talking to a blonde. I didn't think too much of it. I waited till he was done, but he kept talking and talking. So I was, a little bit in a rush, and, for being 12 years old, typical. And I just wanted to introduce myself to him and say, hey, I'm sitting with your dad. And he says, in so many words, I don't have time, kid. I'm busy right now. Well, he's talking to this lady. So that was the first time I ever met Reggie Jackson. And the second time was at last year's National, when I got a picture of Reggie with my son holding up the two proofs I have. So that's 1989. And then I learned about this card, and it was a unicorn. People knew that it existed. It was at the 1983 National. There was the article in 1984, which you mentioned. Al Rosen sold a copy of the card in 1986. We're not sure if it was a copy of the card cut up or if it was a sheet, but he sold it through Sports Collectors Digest ad. And then in 1994, another article came out in Sports Collectors Digest. REA in January 21st, 1994, REA had an uncut sheet with the 4-color Reggie card. So the black ink had his name, nothing missing from the card, unlike the one I have. And it sold to Cross Publications. And Bob Lemke, who worked for them at the time, he negotiated, he put the bid in with REA, and they won it. And that's how in March of 1994, they were able to have a nice spread about the Reggie Jackson card. And that was the second time this card was referred to as the Rarest Reggie. So read that magazine, even though I'm not currently active in the hobby in 1994 because the baseball strike turned me away. Just kept it. Then when I got back into the hobby in 2018, I focused on 3 players: Mike Schmidt, Steve Carlton, and Reggie Jackson. And it was a good time to get back into the hobby pre-COVID because prices weren't anywhere near where they even are today. So I picked up a couple of Reggie Jackson cards, and then I remembered the Baltimore Orioles year, and that's when I started to do research again. And then COVID hit, put it on the back burner, didn't do anything with cards until 2022. Started to research up again, and then I learned. And then I went on the Topps archive site. I Googled, found some other sites, and I learned more about the card. Learned that 2 sold in 2019 REA sale, and then there was another one in 2016. And I thought, well, let me try to see if I can save up enough money for the card. And about a year later, one popped up on eBay, and actually a series of them popped up on eBay, 8 different proofs. It wasn't the 4-color proof, but it was the 1-color proofs, and it was the 2-color proofs, and the 8th proof, which was 3-color proof. Has everything on it except for the black text, and it's missing the signature like all the proofs have. And I struck up a conversation with the seller on eBay, found out who the seller was, talked with the seller outside of eBay, and learned about the history of the card and why they went unsold in the 2019 Heritage auction. The reserve wasn't met, and I got the background history from his perspective about the card. And it turns out that the cards he had for sale and the ones that REA sold in 2019 were from the 1989 Topps Gurney's auction. And that was the first time Topps opened up their archive and sold items from their files. Everything from baseball to Garbage Pail Kids to the wacky cards, and also photographs used, negatives and positive film used to, eventually made it onto cards. A lot of artwork. I got a copy of the catalog, and I learned that they sold 5 to 7 proofs of the Reggie Jackson card, uncut, that were the 4-color proofs. So they sold in addition to the progressive proofs with 3 or less colors. So he had the history, and everything checked out. So I made a deal for 2 of his proofs. One was the all blue one, which can be seen on my Instagram page. And since it has no black ink, there's no Yankees logo. Reggie doesn't have his name. It just has his outfield because blue was needed for that little pennant, which with his position. The other one I purchased was the 3-color proof, and that one has the Yankees logo, but it's not outlined. Since Reggie's name is in black text, it doesn't have that color because black is missing from that. And like all the proofs, it doesn't have his autograph, which is a facsimile autograph.
Do you know how many total are out there in terms of one color proof, multicolor proofs, and then the
Mhm.
four color.
So I'll lump all the 1 to 3 color proofs together. And I would say for each one of the proofs, so there's 8 non 4 color proofs, I would say there's only a couple sheets of each. So I haven't turned up any evidence of more than one existing in the current shape for the 2 cards I have. So there might be one of ones, there might be one of twos. There's just, we don't know, because these were considered scrap because you print all blue, all yellow, all red, and then you see the other colors, you print them, and if the multicolors work good, then you do the 3 color proof. If that works good, then you know you can go on to the 4 color proof, which will closely resemble the production card. And Topps even went to the point of only stamping the 4 color proofs on the sheet. So if you look at the sheet that were sold with mine in 2019, the cards were cut up. It's actually stamped December 8th, 1976. So my card and the other proofs were made sometime on or before December 8th, 1976. And I have pictures of the proof that I can share, folks, on my Flickr page. I was able to get high resolution scans of them. So with the 4 color proof, the one that Keith Oberman owns, there's one currently up on eBay right now. I think the asking price is over $200,000. It's CGC recently graded, but it's missing a nice chunk of the top card. Whoever cut it with scissors cut it way too short. Less than 10 of those exist. The question that no one can answer is, of those 10 Reggie Jackson proofs of him wearing the Baltimore Orioles uniform and all the colors, how many are sheets and how many are actual cut cards? That's the one question no one can answer. Now, Keith Oberman would be able to answer it because apparently he owns 5 to 6 of these. We just don't know if they're, we don't know how many are cut cards and how many are uncut sheets. And I'm aware that he owns just the 4 color proofs, not any of the ones with 1, 2, or 3 color combinations.
Does it ever strike you? I should say, not that. I'm going to rephrase this. How does it feel to own this card? This is a card that, I mean, that you could go to the National this summer, and there could be however many thousands of people that they're expecting, and you could be the only person there over the course of the 5 days, not just who owns it, but who's ever even seen one. That has to mean something to you.
Mm-hmm. At last year's National, I brought the card with me. I actually brought both of my proofs, and we had a picture taken with Reggie, and we were holding the cards. He was holding the 4 color proof. I was holding the blue one, and my son is in the picture too. And he looked at it, and he gave like he gave it a twice a look, so to speak. He glanced at it like twice, and he kind of recognized it because Reggie was in the late '80s and early 1990s. Reggie was a ambassador for Upper Deck. I believe he owned part of the company too, and Reggie was very well versed in the hobby to the extent where before he made the Hall of Fame, starting in 1988, Reggie had a goal of buying 563 high-grade versions of his card. Now, this is before grading existed. So Reggie would go to various dealers and he would buy high-grade copies of his card, and he wanted to autograph each one of those 1969 rookie cards from 1 to 563 because he knew they were going to be worth a lot more when he made it to the Hall of Fame in 1993. Unfortunately, Reggie had 2 fires. He had a fire, I believe, in 1989, and that wiped out all his first batch of his 1969 cards. And I believe he had about 160 or 180 of them. Then he started up again, and unfortunately, he had a second fire, and he lost those cards. So he just gave it up. and he just focused on his deal with Upper Deck, being a being an ambassador, which is part of the reason why Reggie has baseball's very first autographed chase card in the hobby, which was 1990 Upper Deck.
So you saw him sort of side-eyeing the card a little bit, sort of
Yeah,
looking. Did he say anything about it?
nah, no.
No.
He just took a nice picture. He was very courteous. Um, Asked my son, to get closer, take a better picture. He talked to my son a little bit, just, nothing about the cards or anything. If he's having a nice national, it was a 10-second conversation he had with my son, and the photograph came out great.
Yeah, that looks nice. And for those listening, Tony is holding up the photo, and it's exactly what he says. There's the card, Reggie, Tony, and his son. Very nice.
So if Reggie's at this national, I think we're going to get the one color blue proof signed right where Reggie's name would normally be if this had black ink.
And the back of the cards are blank, correct?
Yes. So that's a great question. So on all proof cards that I'm aware of, going back from when Topps started in the 1950s all the way up to the 80s, printing proofs were their first method for doing quality control of the card fronts, because they wanted to make sure they got the right combination of paint correct and no typos or or mislabeled players. So they're all blank backs. Then when they felt comfortable for each sheet, they would move on to printing on the back, because they know we didn't really have to care about the front because the fronts are perfected. They're ready to go into production. So they focused on the back, and that's when they started printing on the back. That's why I think sometimes we see cards from the 1970s or 80s, and they have backs, but the fronts are blank. They're just white fronts, and I'm thinking that could be part of the reason. It wasn't supposed to leave Topps or the printers, but somehow it made it out.
I'm appreciating your time. And my last question for you then on this topic would be, how do you view your ownership of the card? Is there a sense of responsibility that comes with owning this that maybe one might not feel over owning some other type of card? There are not many of these. So how do you view this card within your collection and the larger hobby?
It's definitely one of my favorite cards in my collection, just because it took decades to acquire from when I first learned about it. Reggie is now one of the greatest living Hall of Famers. He's still involved in the hobby somewhat, whether it's through his documentary or it's his association with the Houston Astros now, talking about racial issues like he did during the last World Series, and attending card shows, memorabilia shows, and going on TV. So people continue to learn about what he did, not only for the hobby, but more importantly, what he did for baseball and what he did for sports in general, about a person, being a Hispanic Black American.
If people want to take a look at your Instagram page or learn more about who you are as a collector, where can people find you?
Sure, you can find me on YouTube. You can just search for TJ. TJ is online, IS, and then online, three separate words. I can be reached on Instagram the same way also.
Thanks so much. TJ is online. Tony, thanks for sharing your story of this card, and take care, and look forward to talking again soon.
Thank you for having me.